Welcome back. We've been talking about European exploration. We've sort of broken this up into three short lectures. We talked about Alfred Crosby's argument concerning the creation of little Europes around the world. We looked at Jared Diamond's discussion of those advantages that the Europeans had. In this last lecture, I want to talk about a relatively new book I just read a few months ago, I think during spring semester. It's by Yuval Harari. It's called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. A very provocative book. He ranges over the whole gamut of human history. But there is a brief section here where he talks about European exploration, and I want to share this argument with you. His basic argument is this. He says that European curiosity and the acknowledgement of ignorance is the key to European dominance and the spread of Western civilization after Columbus. So let me go through his argument for you. It's very interesting. He says, both the European scientist and conqueror began by admitting ignorance. They both said, I don't know what's out there. Therefore, they both felt compelled to go out and make new discoveries. And they hoped that this new knowledge would make them masters of the world. And he gives a few examples here. He says when Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798, he not only took his army with him, but he took 165 scholars with him. Among other things, they founded an entirely new discipline, Egyptology. They made important contributions to the study of religion, linguistics, and botany. Another famous example, 1831, the Royal Navy sent the HMS Beagle with Charles Darwin on board to map the coast of South America, the Falkland Islands, and the Galapagos Islands in the Pacific. And of course, we know the results from this. On the Origin of Species is published in 1859. It represents one of the great paradigm shifts in human history and our understanding of life here on Earth. Harari goes on. He says, in the 15th and 16th centuries, Europeans began to draw world maps with lots of empty spaces. Empty spaces, the unknown, and a willingness to admit that we don't know what's there. One indication of the development of the European scientific mindset, as well as the imperial drive of Europeans, is this willingness to admit that we need to go see what's there, and we need to conduct experiments in the scientific domain. These empty maps, according to Harari, are sort of a psychological breakthrough, a clear admission that the Europeans were ignorant of large parts of the world. This may sound commonplace, but it is not. There is a sense of certainty with knowledge, that everything there is to know is known, or everything or anything that new or appears new that can be folded into our already existing body of knowledge. This is what's being challenged here, is this notion that we don't know stuff and we need to go out and find out about it. He goes on, he says, the idea that Columbus had discovered a completely unknown continent was inconceivable for him, as it was for many of his generation. This is a very good point. You remember when Columbus gets to the Bahamas, he's certain that he's in the Indies. When he reaches Cuba, he knows where he is. He's reached Cipango, or Japan, as you'll recall from our discussion of Columbus's maps. And of course, if he's reached Japan, then China just lies over the western horizon, right? Columbus always knows where he is, even though he's dramatically wrong. Psychologically, Columbus is quite certain of where he is. There's a famous story of Columbus. They're crossing the Atlantic, and there's a hubbub on board. Columbus goes out to see what the noise is all about, and his sailors are leaning over the starboard side looking at something, and Columbus looks over as well. And he sees a manatee or some sort of large sea mammal. And he later writes in his journal that he saw a mermaid today, although the mermaid was not nearly as beautiful as he had been led to believe. Again, Columbus has seen something new, but he incorporates it into the knowledge he already has of mermaids in this case. Harari goes on, he says, for thousands of years, not only the greatest thinkers and scholars, but also the infallible scriptures had known only Europe, Africa, and Asia. Could they all have been wrong? Could the Bible have missed half the world? It's very interesting. Harari goes on to say that the first modern man was Amerigo Vespucci, the Italian sailor who took part in several expeditions to the Americas between 1499 and 1504. Now, we talked about Vespucci earlier when we talked about Columbus's maps. And you'll remember that Vespucci had sailed down the Atlantic coast of Brazil and had seen something that astonished him, the mouth of the Amazon River. He had an epiphany at this point and suddenly realized that the landmass over here to the starboard side could not possibly be an island. He said that no island could support a river this big. This has to be a new continent, as indeed it was, South America. So here's the difference between Columbus of the medieval mindset, where nothing is new, and Vespucci, the modern mindset, admitting ignorance and willing to explore to find out exactly what is going on here. And of course, we remember that the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller took Vespucci's information as he depicted his new map of the world. I think it was published in 1507, 1508. And there on the left side of the map is a new world, North and South America. I believe Waldseemüller wrote Amerigo across this new landmass. Of course, we've since feminized it to America. So Harari says the discovery of America was the foundational event of the scientific revolution. It not only taught Europeans to favor present observations over past traditions. That's a key break in human psychology. The desire to conquer new lands also obligated Europeans to search for new knowledge at a breakneck speed. If they really wanted to control these vast new territories, they had to gather enormous amounts of new data about the geography, the climate, the flora, the fauna, languages, cultures, and histories of these new places. Christian scriptures, old geography books, ancient traditions, were of little help here. So we were looking at new ways of knowing. The European imperial expeditions transformed the history of the world. Indeed, I think you could say that Western civilization, instead of being a series of histories of isolated peoples and cultures, now becomes a history of a single, integrated human society, globalization. So with that, I'm going to stop. This is our final lecture on European exploration. The second half of this course, 1122, we'll pick up from this point and move forward into the 20th century. Thanks for your attention. I hope you learned something.